Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 4. This is the Lyceum podcast. I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves.
Oh, hi, I'm Imad, and it's my first time on a podcast, and I'm friends with Zach and Riyadh, and hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, so this is my second time in the podcast, actually. My
Ah,
first time
national
is his first ever podcast he done with Jay.
Yeah, good episode that was.
Yeah, that was a good episode. And yeah, looking forward to speaking more about British society.
Yes, sir.
Rayan, known Riyadh, first time on the podcast. Happy to be.
Definitely not the last time for these guys, that's for sure. But anyway, let's get straight into it. We're all young people and we obviously all live in Britain and we have an experience of Britain too. And I guess the aim of this episode is to kind of analyse British society through a young lens and somehow turn our experience into some good conversation. And we're going to get straight into the first question because why not? What's the point of waiting? So the first question I've got for you lot guys is, what should British society be proud of? Anyone want to kick this off?
I'll kick the first one off. Is I feel like the one thing British society should be proud of is how diverse it is, including in London, where it's very multicultural, where you go, everywhere you go, you see someone from a different ethnicity or different background. In addition to that, one thing as well I like is, I think the statistics said over 50% of them are non-British as well, who live in London. So I would say is
it London the most diverse city in the world, or is it still
it's
New York?
definitely one of the most diverse cities in the world, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if you live in London, you definitely feel that. Like every different shop is,
Yeah,
you know.
I actually wanted to add a lot of the things that I'm proud or I like about British society are not British or not.
That's an interesting observation.
Because it's so diverse, I actually can't really tell I don't know what British means anymore. I mean, I've grown up in Brixton, South London my whole life. I don't really know what the term British means anymore.
Would British society, living in a British society, mean talking about democracy?
I mean, it's a big part of British society.
Or the monarchy.
It's definitely one of, and also being a secular state where people can practice their own religion for free as well, like whatever they do for free, like as in freedom and
That's
in
actually a good
peace.
point. Yeah.
However, obviously there will be some parts where people will go against it, but in majority of them, it's good to they practice it within their own free will. I'll give you one example. Is today they're doing an Eid festival in multiple places. For example, in Westfield, both Westfield, Shepherd's Bush, as well as in Stratford, as well as Trafalgar Square. They're celebrating Eid because even though Eid was last week, they weren't a festival, so they're performing a festival today. And I can give you examples where even like a Hindu festivals, like if you go to Leicester, they do Diwali as well. It's quite prominent there. And I would say, just like is it being a secular state where people from different religions, different background, I think that's one thing I feel like you should be proud of.
You 2 points, your point I think kind of attaches his point and comes back to my point where I think the reason why Britain is so diverse is because it has no culture. There's so much void to fill, you know? It's like an empty canvas and all these cultures and flavours and tastes come and they paint a nice picture. So,
I think, I think that's due to the fact that we can practice what we want or believe in what we want so freely. For example, my family are from France, yeah? When you go to France, there's a massive difference.
100%.
You cannot practice what you want. Here, I'm comfortable, so I'm Muslim. I'm comfortable praying outdoors in a park or me and my friends to pray in a public space. In France, I wouldn't dare do that.
You can't even wear a hijab in France as well.
But do you know what I feel like with British culture, which is an important point, is when you said for such an established culture, like it's evolved into this kind of. I think one thing you could say is you should be proud of is it's a detachment from religion. Like with the culture that we have now, you have this kind of quasi-Britishness that people have now, where you have Muslim people who identify with the British culture, whereas like with other countries, their culture is really like binary where you're either in it or you're out of it, and now we have this kind of like
France.
That's
for
perfect.
example.
You've said it perfectly. It's like it's not a thing where you're either British or you're Muslim. You can
be both. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I think
100%. Yeah.
that detachment from religion is quite interesting, because I think it happened with the Industrial Revolution, and it's no wonder why Britain came with the first steam train. Britain came with Charles Darwin. And even look at British
First
literature,
telephone.
it's all Sherlock Holmes and Frankenstein, all scientific things, because essentially Britain traded in religion and the idea of spirituality for scientific progress. And I feel like, in my opinion, today we are suffering the void of that. It's kind of like Britain sold their soul for power in a way by sacrificing the spiritual nature of.
But
our
do you
culture.
think it's being in a spiritual form, form is just as important as well?
Oh, of course, and I feel like.
Government.
Luckily, Britain is a good. I don't know, because I think there's two ways to look at it. Because I feel like Britain's going through a meaningless era where people have no meaning, but it also, that meaningless has allowed a lot of imprint on top of it. So you can kind of go two ways with that. I
So
believe.
I'll give you an example. Yeah. So if let's say a prime minister who's an atheist compared to a person who's religious, has like moral guidelines and such, who would you mostly trust in terms of a prime minister?
I think that goes down to the art of a leader, right? Because it's not just about policies and their belief; it's about leading. But
and it's about, as a leader, you cannot go into leading a country doing only what you believe in. You have to have people around you that are different.
and can we think of any like British leaders then? Because I think the first one that I think of the last few years has been completely torn apart is Churchill. And I think he's a crazy example of just Britishness, you know, if you look at Churchill.
Yeah, I would say Churchill is quite controversial in terms of like in the historical figure, because he used to own enslaved
Yeah, but he's a
people,
product
but
of
as
his
well
time,
as
you would
yeah,
argue.
of course, he's a conservative British man.
Yeah, very conservative.
Where he's very conservative, where in the past it was perceived as quite normal, but whereas today it's not.
But that's the point, isn't it? Like, Churchill epitomizes everything that Britain is in a way.
So when it will be, because this is like quite subjective then, in the sense where it's always changing.
No, but he's
So
a
when is
product
the-
of his time. You can't really look at Churchill through the modern day lens. You can only look at him through his time back then. But I'm just saying, like, if you look at what we just spoke about, Churchill in that sense is that he's not a religious man. He was very conservative, and I guess he represents an old Britain.
Yeah.
And I think the British struggle now is that we can't move away from old Britain.
You know
sometimes.
what I think? I think he represents the old British Empire.
No, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
Because Britain used to control 1/4 of the world.
Ridiculous, isn't it? It's mad how you actually think this one little island somehow, and they didn't do it like the Romans or the French by conquering through battalions and legions. They just done it through diplomacy. Like, it's so British. Like,
Well, I mean,
you know.
But do you
not,
think
I
that-
wouldn't say diplomacy as well.
Oh,
to
it's
be
a lot of
fair.
di-
There's
it's
a
a lot
lot.
of diplomacy.
There's
I
a
agree
multiple.
in comparison to the way other.
Oh, of course. I mean,
countries
yeah,
have
there was
gained
obviously
power.
violence and
Yeah.
stuff like this.
It
But
was diplomatic in contrast to other.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to argue.
Yeah, but maybe that's probably a reason why we've kind of, well, Britain has kind of dropped the ego of culture to an extent, because we've lost it. We've lost that empire. Like, maybe that's probably what's happened. I mean, we've lost a lot of power. So those figures that are previously historic in the Great Britain, they're not as they're not as big now.
You know what? There's something you just mentioned, but just reminded me, is the thing called soft power that Britain has. Soft power is as in they can't physically do anything, but they can influence in another country's.
I would
area.
argue not anymore, for sure.
No,
think
I would
Britain-
say because for example, it might not be as economically dominant as other developed countries such as Germany or America or even China as well, but because they show sometimes a lot of them, like for example America, when they put a lot of money into, let's say for example Ukraine or other parts of the world to stop, I don't know, other fighters or organizations, that's hard power they use as well. As in sometimes, for example, the invasion of Iraq, they used hard power to stop certain people from being in control. But soft
Britain
power,
joined America and
yeah,
Iraq.
but it was through American leadership.
Yeah, but still British.
They controlled. It was a coalition, 100%, but it was through
But
mostly.
I feel like I know. I get.
They use a lot of soft power. Meaning that what they had in the past, they tried to influence.
Where would you say Britain is now then?
Well, it's dropping in standards when it comes to prestige.
For sure.
Definitely.
Definitely.
I mean,
You feel
I
it.
saw
You
that
feel it for
out
sure.
of all of the G7
We are, yeah, the
countries,
worst economically.
We're
yeah.
like projected to have the worst economic growth, and there's a reason for that.
I agree.
And I think that's a part of the reason we don't, as a country, Britain, or let's say our leaders or the government. I don't think we make decisions solely based on
The benefit, a democratic decision
exactly.
for the
I
people.
think
Yeah.
I think Britain. I'm gonna say it plain and simple.
Say it.
We're kind of we're just followers, or our government.
At this point, we are.
At this point, we are, and
We
there's
are,
a
yeah.
reason.
What do they call it? London grad. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Like
I do
that's-
think is becoming more corrupt than it was in the past
Oh,
because
for sure. We're desperate.
yes, because right now because of inflation is still as high as it was a couple months ago, where a lot of other European countries as well as America itself they're bringing down the inflation under 10%. We're still over 10%, and no one is saying anything about it. Where they promised the government, the Conservative Party said they're gonna bring down the inflation, but not. It hasn't went down a little.
But I would argue though, like to
But-
your point, British society, Britain as a whole is suffering what every great empire suffers, a deterioration period, where they're holding on to this symbol of power that gave them what you said earlier, that hard or soft power, and clearly we don't have it no more. And our decisions are still trying to uplift this symbolism.
I
of
disagree.
Power.
I do think we have soft power. This country still has a lot of influence around the world when it comes to soft power.
Oh,
because,
yeah, but
for
not as-
example,
Can you give me an
yeah,
example?
I'll give you an
Current.
example. The Commonwealth, the creation of the Commonwealth is keeping all the
Yeah, but
countries
that
that they
Commonwealth was
used to control.
created out of old British power.
Yeah, but
Do you think the Commonwealth will exist in the next 20 years?
The thing is, the Caribbean countries, even some parts of the world like South Africa, I think is part of the. Is it not? I forgot completely. But they can leave whenever they want, or they can, for example, Canada, they can remove the head of government.
But are
which
they
is
doing
the
that
king.
because Britain is supplying them something? Or are they doing it because each of these countries
Oh,
get something
I'm sure
out of it
Canada.
themselves?
Well, right now because it's like a organization where they get together. Sometimes they play Olympics games, have their own Commonwealth Olympics.
But that's what British power has come down to now: Olympic and
But
sports
it's still
community events.
it's still a soft
That's
power
just- it's a
where
deterioration.
Britain is the leader of that Commonwealth.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
It's still a political tool they use to influence some countries.
Okay, that is true, but how much actual political power do we have
Well, not as
with
m-
these other countries?
when it comes to the world stage,
None.
I would say
it's just our history is our only symbol.
it's not none compared to the other
So
Caribbeans.
why are we the only country to have a projected negative GDP?
Yeah, but that's
10 years.
That's the thing. You're talking about, and you're talking about in an economic sense. Economy is not the only factor that positions someone to be more
But
powerful.
right now we are going into a cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
That is going to affect all of Britain.
All of people.
How
Yeah,
on
100%.
earth, like, how are we going to get out of that? That's
I'm
going
saying-
to affect us in the short term.
And we've
the
cut
long
ourselves
term.
off from the EU essentially. We're Europe's number one. Well, they're trying to be petty with us
Yeah.
at this point, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
But again, it's funny because the only thing that what balances this all out is our diversity of culture, I guess. I think it's the one thing, as we said previously,
That's keeping us together. in a
keeping
sense.
people together.
That's
in
the
a
only
way.
thing that's keeping.
And I think, you know how you spoke about France? I want to bring up a point I want to throw it to you, what you think. I think in France and Germany and Spain, it's very like dogmatic cultures where they believe strong. And I think they have a fear of invasion from a long time ago, where they're on mainland Europe, they have a lot of cultures changing, a lot of their values always threatened. You had the Napoleonic Wars, you had the Prussian Wars, everything. So a lot of their values was always under attack. Britain never had that. We're on an island, we're away from things. So things that we used to hold, we never needed to protect. Why? We had nothing to protect it from. That's why I think it's deteriorating at a very fast rate. But then that deterioration is, I guess when we go back to the first point, allowed so much to fill in.
I think that's because the reason why it has nothing. Well, they did do a lot as well to combat other areas because there were a lot
About British
when it comes to the
lands,
first
like mainland
Yeah,
Britain.
because it's in a perfect geographical location. It's an island
Literally.
where at that time as well they had the largest and most powerful navy in the world, in the past as well, where no one could invade them when they can actually protect their supply lines as well.
Let me propose something to you. So we said one
That's
thing
how they become
Britain
an
should be
empire as
proud
well.
of is diversity. Do you think another thing we should be proud of is our history?
Yeah, 100%. I would say there's
There's
always
some people out there that like,
in a sense,
But I would agree with you. I think Britain should be absolutely proud of it.
Okay, so in a sense of
Not
when it
all
comes
of it,
to
but aspects
obviously
of it.
there's always pros and cons to every British or every empire. What they've done, for example, the Ottoman Empire, where when they did the genocide with the Armenians.
Yeah, but why are we looking at? But we should hold empires and people as the highest examples, not the lowest.
I mean, it
because all
depends on
people
how
have
they
evil
treat.
sides.
It depends on how they treat other nations or other people as well.
Yeah,
If they promote diversity, you can't really.
But is diversity the number one human goal? Like,
Yeah, I think from a historical perspective, there weren't these luxuries to think about soft goals like diversity, relative.
wow.
Like
Great point.
everything was a power struggle, and it was by any means you get your power. And people want to play this ethical goal now, where you want to criticize empires. You think these people's priority was to empathize with other areas. It was they're gonna kill me, so I'm gonna take.
They had a
them.
relationship of
It's more-
strong and the weak.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more on an economical basis because, for example, when they established trade in India, they established a company called the East Indian Company, where the main priority is to make money from India when it comes to trading with other Indian nations. But in time, that company grew so big to the point where they actually basically influenced the whole of India.
Yeah.
And took lands in India as well to the point where
But that's just power. That's how power
yeah,
works.
it's true. But
And a
the
lot of
priority
them
is always
luxuries we
economical.
got from that, we all benefit from today in our society.
Yeah, 100%.
Look at London. Look at the architecture we have. Look at the decadence in England. It's alone. We benefit of our history, and to say we're not proud of it is to say we're not proud of the things we have now. You can't have one and not the other. Right?
Yeah, there's always for me that when it comes to being proud of history, it's good to look at both perspectives.
Yeah, no, of course. But what should we focus on more? Because you can look at it in two ways. We should judge our past by our biggest failures, or judge our past by our highest examples. And British highest examples is Charles Darwin and like these innovators, you know. And it's no wonder why a lot of great innovators and a lot of thinkers come to London at some point, because our empire allowed this this environment to happen. And I think British people should be proud of their history.
Yeah, I mean, they should be proud, and every good thing comes at a great cost as well.
Well, yeah.
Like,
Fantastic imagery.
there's two sides to the coin.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And people shouldn't forget that. Like, I mean, we should be proud of everything that's going on. But it came at a massive cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it
I agree.
depends. To what extent do you think, like, the things that happened in the past have facilitated what happens now? Because you could say it's a necessary thing for culture for a society to become so big that let's say, for example, with the Greeks, for example, or Egyptians, they were the first to innovate with engineering and science and discovery on a massive scale, and they only were able to facilitate that because they had people doing the jobs that were really required, those people in the working class and the slaves as well in Egypt and Greece and stuff, for those philosophers to be able to sit there and spend their whole days thinking. They didn't have that luxury before, and that's why innovation comes like that. And when you have, it depends on what timescale you're looking at it, because we don't even know what's going to happen in the future, but to an extent, the power and the size and the scale that the British Empire had might have been facilitating what we see as diversity now, because we it's only a luxury, like I said, to be empathetic. It's only when you've got enough power that you don't see, you're not seeing everyone as threats, and you're seeing them as victims of yourself. And that's when you only have the desire to care for people, is when you're like, you just sympathize with them, because you're at that level where they're not competing anymore. If you can see it on a smaller scale, when people are friends, they want, or when you see other people and you're comparing, if they're at a level of competition with you, you're not going to sympathize with them because you're competing against them. But it's only once you feel established compared to them, that's when you start to think, oh, like, let me help them out, let me be a nice person. It doesn't exist. It's the same.
And it's funny you say that, because the only thing that can give power is power itself. Essentially, you can't have power without power. So it's, and then some people would argue, or nations and empires would argue, bro, I can't even sum it up better than you. You summed it up beautifully. I would argue.
That's a great point.
It's a great point. I think it's time we move on to the next question. Let's do it, boys. Okay, this is a good one. Agree or disagree? British society is expressive. I'm going to go with disagree. I don't mind kicking this off.
Go on.
I think
Why do you disagree?
I think because America's a great contrast. If you look at British society, it's very much uniform thinking. And it's very much equality of all. No one is allowed to shine brighter. No culture is allowed to be bigger than another culture. No religion should be bigger than any other religion. It's a very uniform society. And in that case, it can't be expressive by its very nature. Because to express means you're trying to dominate us. You're trying to dominate a certain ideology or a certain identity. But if you look at America, it's very interesting. They're very expressive. That's why ideas and movements and people change all the time, because they always have this ability to express their ideas, and people are allowed to listen and are allowed to speak. In the UK, we look at them like, shut up. It's kind of like, stop it, get back in your place.
I agree with you. I think in the UK, so I'm a teacher and I see this within my students as well. When we're doing PSHE, so we talk about, I don't know,
it's like sociology, but like, yeah.
It's basically sociology.
There are students that want to say something, but because they've been conditioned to not say certain things and not express certain things, they can't.
Even express their own passion.
That's terrible for human development as well. For example, I've got a few ASD students, so autistic. They're on the autism spectrum, and they are told how to behave. That is terrible for the development of a child, because if they are on the spectrum, they are just different. But British society, I think, or the way we grow up, you're not allowed to be too different, otherwise you come across as weird. And that's why a lot of British people, I disagree with this, but the stereotype is Americans are weird. There's a lot of that.
Or cringy.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've been in America, and I've been, and we've all, people who are watching have been in America. You're on the subway, on the streets, you're in crowd. The people are just loud, they're expressive.
They don't care
in
about
England,
what other
if someone's being loud on the street, what does everyone do?
Just give you that dirty
this
look.
Guy's crazy. Or
Who do you think you are to be standing out? What makes you so special? What makes you so great?
But we're assuming here expressiveness is good. I'm just going to put a question out there. What makes you think it is?
Interesting question.
Yeah, I think they should have a balance in when it comes to expressiveness and not being as expressive. For example, like, it depends on the situation where you are.
I just want to answer your question quick. Yeah, I think expression is good only for the strong. If you go, and I think only the strong can express.
Yeah.
Because because the strong look at what the uniform is and say, no, I want to wear something different. You know, some people don't have the courage to wear colours when everyone's wearing neutrals.
Why not the weak themselves as well?
Because the fear of the attention, the spotlight, because people, you have to remember, like, out to all of us and everyone watching, we all have an identity, or we like to think we have an individual identity, you know? And it takes some level of strength, I would argue, to project that into society itself, to throw it out there. And it's strong because people would disagree with your identity, disagree with your whole being. And I think it's bad when someone has strong expressive instincts and they lock it because they want to fit in the queue at Tesco. Fantastic imagery, Zach, isn't it?
Fantastic observation right there.
But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think being expressive is... Yeah.
I agree with the thing about you, when you said it's only for the strong, but we've made it that way. As in, the thing is, if there wasn't this, like, thing about, you can only be yourself if you can handle criticism and, you know, stuff like that, why does that need to be a thing? It shouldn't be a thing. People are different. We just need to deal with it.
Because of resentment, I would argue. And people look at other people who can express themselves and they resent the fact that they don't have that strength themselves. Exactly. Therefore, we have that natural criticism,
exactly.
I would argue.
And it's like people that are like boring. Yeah. Boring people look at people that are different and they're like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, for example, me and Zach are very outgoing and we're not quiet people. Yeah, you will know if we're walking down the street.
100%.
But that's not because we're crazy or we don't respect people around us. That's just how we are.
Now, when
We
you're
are
together, you're in your
bubbly.
own little bubble, like your own
Exactly.
world, separate from what
Yeah,
society
yeah.
demands
For
of you.
example, do you remember we were at a park or something? We were walking. Someone told us to keep the noise down. But I'm like, wait, we're in a public place.
That's uniform society.
Why do we need to fit into this?
Like
Being
everyone.
quiet,
yeah,
just sitting there having a normal conversation. No, we want to have fun. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
need to get that energy out.
yeah, exactly, 100%.
But I feel like with expression, like in terms of personality, I think this is a like my own opinion, but to an extent, I feel like personality is an illusion in some contexts. Like it's hard to be expressive if you don't fundamentally believe in personality per se, because let's say you have a certain fashion sense, yeah. You believe that was completely your choice, where we're constructed to wear there's certain rules that you go by. The layers of rules that you decide to conform to is what is decided. It's not exactly what you're wearing. Like for example, we know you wear trousers and t-shirts. That's a layer of conformity that you stay to. But everyone's like, I'm willing to explore up into a certain layer.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of that. I was just like, I thought it was really weird, but I was out for a meal with some friends and there was other people there. I didn't know them. And I was like, yeah, I'm a teacher. And he's like, are you a teacher? But you're wearing a pink hat. I'm like, what does that even mean? I actually don't get what that means. What, teachers can't wear pink hats? They can't dress casually? Do I need to walk around with my staff badge and my suit? You know what I mean? It's just, like you said, there are certain things we do because it was set like that.
So wait, would you argue that personality is just a social construct? You don't believe in any...
No, because I think there's a reality in believing it.
Yeah.
Like I think you have to believe it for it to be a thing, but in itself that means it's a thing.
But isn't the personality a trade out word for the self or the ego
Oh,
or for the spirit or the soul?
But there's many people that resort to nihilism when they start to believe that it doesn't exist. And when, for example, like it takes having a certain ego and believing you're this person or I'm this identity, and then you conform to that originality that you believe, and that's what you strive to continue to do. And in itself, it creates its own self. But when you don't believe in it, you go down a negative path of believing everything is socially. The things you're wearing are influenced by different cultures, and plus the balance.
But
of
influence is a good thing, I would argue.
No, yeah.
It depends on what, obviously, but I think personality develops when you're in your surroundings, in your environmental surroundings. For example, since you were born, maybe the way you see your parents act, you follow their examples.
So
even
do you think
other
their
people.
personality is just imprinted by external factors? Because there is some
there is-
personalities that can go into circles and dominate.
Yeah,
and everyone changes their personality to fit that person's personality.
No, yeah, there's different personalities.
I agree with what you're saying. I think it's how you grew up. Like, I think I dress the way I dress. I talk the way I talk. I think the way I think because of my parents and my friends. And I mean, I guess the people I've been around. For example, I'm Algerian. My way of thinking is very.
But you always have the option of experimentation.
Yeah,
that's never stripped from you.
But that's because I've grown up here and I've been able to think outside the box or think.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Be
but
more open-minded in a sense compared to, let's say, your parents were.
Yeah, I'm
in
not
the past.
arguing that external factors have no.
You know what? You know what's crazy? I'll give you an example for you. Is the way you act. A lot of let's say, for example, me and Riyadh are cousins, so we grew up when even since we were born. So the point is. Yeah, the point is basically. Why is he laughing like that?
Because you're my cousin, bro.
Yeah,
I've known you since I was born.
Yeah, I've known you since I was born, basically. And but the point is, my mum, even like your aunt, your mum as well, says about how you act just like your dad act. But the way you are as a person.
Yeah,
mannerisms. Yeah.
But I think my personality is complete. I would argue.
Would you say
when
some
you educate
parts
yourself, your personality completely shifts into a world of its own? Because you're right. You are. This is just. I think that's. adolescence. When you're young, you are basically a product of your environment. You are where society puts you at a certain point: school, education, social
It's
groups.
the young years. That's the teenage
But at a
years,
certain
yeah,
point,
that's
what I think
adolescence.
turns childhood or teenagehood into adulthood is when someone educates themselves, because that's when it's a good time to look back what you've just lived and reevaluate everything
yeah.
according to other perspectives and other
You know what's
ideas.
crazy as well? Someone's I saw or I've I think read or listened, is that your personality changes every 7 years.
No, I think it changes every day if you educate yourself
I
every
agree
day.
with you.
It could change every 2 hours.
Obviously,
But this is what I was saying
I'm,
with
I'm
it's an
gonna give you
illusion.
an example.
It's an illusion. It's not.
On average, it's not going to be like every 7 years.
No, I know what
you'll
you're
be
saying.
but
No,
you'll
but
be
I
a very
agree with
after
Brilliant.
7 years, you'll be a different person.
No, but
No, I think
agree
you'll be a
with
different
him.
person every day.
Thank you,
Yeah.
because you can experience something mad, yeah,
Change.
and then the day after,
Yeah.
you're gonna change. For example, when I went to Thailand, I saw some stuff I've never seen. The next day, the way I thought was different because I've seen something I've never seen.
You've
and
seen
I've
the
never
light in a
experienced.
way. In a
Yeah,
sense.
kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's based on your environmental
Yeah.
factors you grow up in, and
But
even
it's
just
not
carrying
like
on in
set.
your life.
It's not set. It's an idea that we think.
It's forever change. It's
Yeah.
forever forming.
Yeah, yeah,
And it never
exactly.
becomes formed until you.
Yeah.
But
And
I do think you have your fundamental personality is always going to be stay the same no matter how young and to how old you
I
are.
don't know. If you can say
I
that.
think it becomes. I think it's expansionary, and then at a point it becomes retractionary, because when people get to a certain age, they start to like default on certain axioms that they hold to, and then they don't move off of them.
as
It's
an
like,
act of self-preservation.
yeah, and I think that's what happens, because as someone's personality kind of fades and they turn into repetitive nature, they have to keep themselves to a certain axiom to like you said, preserve their personality. Like,
And you're right.
So-
completely
That's
right.
a
And I think to add to your point, a great example of that is you guys know and they'll get to know. I love art, and I think artist history is such an underrated thing, because you're right. These artists are always seeking something new, seeking something more creative, more beautiful, more to attain something, and they never settle on their old art. They're always in search of new, and the reason they lose their minds in the process is you're right. They
Yeah.
don't fall back.
yeah.
They don't come back
Yeah.
in. You,
And
you know what I mean? You're right, completely.
I do think, which is why I was saying, I think the alternative to not developing a personality is nihilism. It goes to a depressionary
Oh, for sure.
state, because we're too primitive to develop a personality out of everything we see. The world is too big, which is why we start to have revolve this sense of identity around just certain things that we see until we can't encapsulate anymore.
Yeah,
and like
and
these
that's-
guys that lose their minds in the process of learning and discovering, it's too much to encapsulate into one personality, one identity that is not changed by anything. Because if you that's why in staying a personality and having an axiom, you will be wrong at some point, but it is a trade-off. If you're not wrong in certain things, then you're probably still gonna start going psychotic, because you'll never understand the world, and you'll never have a sense of self that's
I agree.
that's a main character in life, because you'll never fully understand it. Which is why stories and stuff encapsulate a rule, and the character goes through something and figures out everything that is in that lesson.
Interesting.
There's no more to it, and that is something that we strive to do all the time.
But I would
we can
argue
never always
only because
do.
the character, we know the character has a beginning and end. We have
Yeah.
something like a sandwich, and we get to see what's inside, like the middle part. And in our lives as we live in, we don't know where the end is. So to have like a certain goal to be achieved, you never know, because as you say, the nihilism part is you never know when you're going to go. So you never know when to invest in something properly. But I want to add to your point earlier, I think you said, so your argument, I would say, is personality is a concept that takes the world of complexity and makes it simple, so the mind can preserve itself and not collapse on its, I say, ambition or ego to want
to understand the
world completely. And we call that, I guess, ignorance is bliss in a sense, because it comes down to less concepts you know, the better.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of psychology students are some of the most depressed people I know, because they keep learning so many intricate, complex concepts, and they forget the simple concepts.
Because in reality, the world is too complex to understand.
Too complex.
And we spoke about this before, when I said how I'm trying to attach more ego to the way I think. not because I think it's beneficial for long-term knowledge. It's because it's beneficial for myself.
I agree.
In being one human with one human brain, you can't start to try and rationalize everything. You have to have a sense of ego that makes you feel like you're the main character.
And the ego also has a will. I would argue understanding in the world is just collecting database of the external reality. I think the highest form of ambition is to transform the world. And I guess that relates back to the idea of the artist again. And I don't want people to think artists are just painters. Artists could be philosophers, thinkers, people who look at things and they don't like how things are going. They transform, not just...
Yeah.
Okay, that is that. And the ego is so important in knowledge because it allows that will, that desire to go, oh, I want to transform what's in front of me in a sense, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't feel so overwhelming
Exactly.
because you see yourself as a power that can conflict it. And yeah.
You know
and that
what?
goes back to the idea of the individual and expression, I guess.
Yeah,
The expression to want to... Expression can be another... We can... So could we agree here, guys, that to want to transform the world in a positive way is a form of expression?
To an extent, yeah. What do you think?
I'm still thinking right now because
Yeah.
there's
Keep
still
thinking. Thinking's good.
that some sort of expression is.
Do you think... Okay, so I'll kind of repeat it. So the will to want to transform the world in a positive way, change things and innovate or build on top like a pyramid level you get it, is that a form of expression? And if so, should we then become more expressive?
But
I feel like it can be, but at the same time we can't, because I feel like I do believe since you were born there's some sort of personalities I don't think you'll change.
So you're a slave to your birth, essentially.
No, it's not about a slave to your birth, but you have that you have that personality that always sticks with you. Because that's who
I think that's
you
a
are as
matter of
person.
faith then, isn't
the
it?
thing is, I definitely agree to an extent with what Zach's saying. I think there are some things you never lose.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah,
at
of
the
course,
end of the
of
day,
course.
when your brain is developing, you are with.
But
your
that's the
parents
beauty of the
or whatnot.
individual.
But that's
Like,
what
no
I
one
think
is like you.
I think how impressionable you are, that the marginal, let's say, the marginal like value in every new experience you get diminishes as you get older. So
Definitely.
and
100%.
like that's why people that have something bad happen to them when they're young, it puts an impression on them that's so powerful. No years after that could do anything to
I'll
change
give
it.
you a good example. I think this is crazy, but Zach can't drink fizzy drinks because when he was younger. So it's an example though.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Zach, when he was younger, you say the story.
Oh yeah,
I
okay.
think
So
it's crazy.
basically, when I was young, very young actually, I used to love drinking fizzy drinks. I was like, yes, love my fizzy drinks. It was in Algeria as well. It was like the Gazouz, yeah, the Hamoud. Yeah, it's a
By the way,
selective-
guys, we're all Algerian, by the way.
Yeah. So obviously, when I saw that, I was thinking, I was just drinking Coke one time. So I was drinking Coke. I was like, oh, this is amazing right there. And then obviously it was a bottle. One time, my uncle squeezed the bottle to the point where it went all over my nose, my mouth, like. Gee. At the end of the day, when I had it, now I can't taste. I hate the smell of Coke.
I wanted to test it out because every time we're out, I'm like, yo, Zach, I bought you a 7-Up. He's like, no, I can't drink it. So I
Yeah.
tested it out.
Anything fizzy, I hate.
put something fizzy in I think it was a red cup or something.
Yeah, let me know in the comments if he's a bad or good friend.
I had to. I needed to.
Let us know.
I needed to experiment it. I thought, no, he's just trying to be difficult. I gave him something fizzy, spat it out.
Like
He
a
actually
cobra,
spat
innit?
out. It's like I gave him
Wow.
some poison or something.
It's like a PTSD type of
Yeah,
stuff.
so
yeah.
this is what I mean. Some things you
Like,
don't lose.
even-
You will never lose that. I
Even-
tell him to grow up, but it's actually something.
You know what's crazy? Even when it comes to you know when you have like the cola Haribos and stuff like that, I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
eat them. Anything that's cola
That's not
flavor,
even fizzy.
I can't. I don't because I had that because Coke obviously you have that distinctive
Your
taste.
childhood was weirdly easy but troubling at the same time.
Like,
innit?
you
Wow.
can't,
I can't-
enjoy. Sorry, this
First of all,
Anything to do with
trauma.
cola, I hate.
That's your
you
only
can't
trauma.
even enjoy all like KA, Fanta.
Yeah, you missed out
can't
on a lot
enjoy
of
that.
good flavours,
I'm not
bro.
gonna taste that.
You're
Yeah,
missing
I'm
out.
happy. I'll stick with my orange juice and my apple juice.
What was your top 3 KA flavors?
Black grape has to be
Black
the
grapes.
average.
Black grape is
the
the
non-fizzy
best.
one though. I
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
non-fizzy.
If I see-
grape.
Yeah, the non-fizzy
I
one.
think
is
personally-
nice.
49p.
Listen, black grape is the best, isn't it? But I think Caribbean cola is so underestimated, bro. Like, I think you had to be like a serious K bang up to work your way to get to that one.
Yeah, he's gonna run out if you carry on talking about cola.
He's gonna like, can we talk juicy one? Flipping hell, guys.
Past.
Cool. We're gonna go on to the third question now. Agree or disagree that Islamic culture is good for British society?
I'm gonna have to answer this one 100%. I think so. I genuinely think Islam is the answer to many of our problems. Okay, I have to say, and I'll give you just one example just to kick off the conversation. If so a mathematician did a study. If everyone did zakat, so people that don't know what zakat is if you earn above a certain threshold, you give 2.5% of that to charity every year. I think it's 30 grand
of your wealth, each year.
It's different. It's relative to the how
much you make.
Yeah. Anyway, if everyone in the world gives zakat, so 2.5% of above a certain threshold, there will be no poverty. Mm-hmm. No one will be poor. That is a very simple solution to one of the biggest problems we face right now.
What stops us from taking that and just leaving the rest of Islam behind? Why can't we just take that element and say that's good, but why do we have to carry the whole party with us?
Okay, Islam is very simple. If you are a good person, you respect everyone, you don't inflict any harm on anyone, you go to heaven, essentially. That is a solution to many of our problems. Give me one issue we have right now, and I'll try and give you an example of how Islam can...
Well, I'm on the fence with this because I'm still in my stage of challenging my own religious ideals and values. I think Islam is going to be the most dominant religion in England at some point because I think what we said earlier is that we're in a meaningless age and a secularized age, and as people go on, poverty increases, X, Y, Z, people are going to resort back to religion. Christianity's been completely torn apart by critics, movies, satires, anyway.
Even
Islam has been somehow protected, not somehow, just because of geographic where it is, it's been protected, okay? And is it a good replacement for meaning? Sure, yeah. I would agree. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of interpretation, end of the day. And I know what the typical...
That's a big problem in this modern day. Everyone wants to interpret Islam in a different way. Islam is a very simple and beautiful religion.
Yeah, that's my problem. That is my problem.
Exactly.
Because life isn't simple and it isn't just easy as... The world is so complex, and to drag all these complexities and multiplicities to one single cause and effect cause, and it's all of Allah's doing, all of a God. Let's just take the word Allah out and just put as... people replace that with I think the world is very interesting. And
But to whose benefit is... to whose benefit is seeing it in that light? Is seeing life as more complex than religion? Because that doesn't benefit the normal person. It doesn't.
For the mass people, I would agree.
It's like we said about the people have to have axioms to give them a full understanding of the world. Otherwise, they become depressed and they have bad mental state.
Some things we don't need to make complicated. Like there are some things in this life we need to, because obviously we are very complex beings, and we overthink a lot. Human beings overthink a lot.
You know what?
Like
can I give you an example when it comes to, you mentioned about interpretation? It was like a true story about even the life of the Prophet. So basically, there was an army that was about to, let's say, conquer or another city in Saudi Arabia. It was during the conquest, and so basically when they were about to conquer, they will have to pray Dhuhr, which is like the second prayer of the day. Because of that, when they were marching towards that place, half of the army said, let's pray now and then move on. The other said, let's just conquer first and then we pray. So they had a big argument because of that. At the end, half of them they just went to go conquer. Some of them, they stayed and prayed and then they went. When they got back, they told the Prophet about the situation because they had a big argument and they think they were right and everything. But what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually said is, that's all right. Everybody have their own way of thinking. Everybody believes in whatever. way, as long as you do what you need to do to, let's say, pray. That's the most important part. Or, for example,
Yeah, it's only
you're doing it
in the Islamic
you're doing it,
perspective.
no, you're doing it in good intention. So I
the
can talk
Islamic
about,
perspective.
I could talk about it in other
But if
perspective,
we
not
come out of that
Islamically.
perspective, it's like what's a god to it? What's a god to a non-believer? It's like is the Islamic moral system
say-
only applies to
Because
Islam?
you said to do something with good intentions. So where does that come from?
The good
Like,
intentions
what
is the
good-
Islamic
Simple.
assumption of good
Very
intentions.
simple.
What's the good? What does good intentions mean?
If you do not harm someone in a negative way.
And do you need?
So you can't think of any scenarios where harm can have an ultimate good.
No.
Oh,
So
come
you-
on, yeah, that's for
You
sure.
can.
Okay, go on.
In what
Okay.
way?
Okay,
If-
let's say if you don't kill this one person, this guy's gonna kill 50 other people.
But he hasn't killed the other
Okay,
50.
that,
though.
have you
As well.
let's say the scenario where there's a train going down a railroad. Yeah, there's two
it's a
tracks.
classic question.
Yeah,
It's, I know that. I know
one
that.
track there's one
Yeah, I
person,
know
and the
that.
other track there's 5 people on. You have a lever that you can pull, so you can save that one person or kill the other 5. What are you doing?
You have to
I know,
kill
I
the
know,
one person.
I know the this thing because I learned about it in religious studies in A levels, and it's utilitarianism when it comes to pleasure and pain, and it's talking about what gives the most pleasure. So you and gives the less pain. So in
This
about
goes back
in a
to
sense,
an old Greek art. What's most pleasurable versus what's the greater
yeah.
good?
So that's a utilitarianism. Bentham's utilitarianism. He talks about if you kill that one person, that other 5, because they give more pleasure than pain, you save the other 5 instead of and you kill the last person. But that's a very different situation, I would say, or scenario. that
Let's change the
talks
scenario
about-
then. What if that one person's a leader of a great leader of a great movement?
Doesn't matter.
But it's
Everyone's
responsibility. But
Yeah.
there is then I would
But
argue
your
there
net
is
good. The net good would probably be on the person who's the leader.
Yeah.
exactly because
So
they
then what do you do? It's a lot more complex than
like
than-
life. That's what I'm
That's
saying.
because we're making it complex.
Yeah, but
forget
but
the
like that
title,
is the point.
Forget the title. Forget what they do.
Yeah.
Forget that. Am I going to kill one person? Am I going to kill 5 people?
Okay.
It's simple.
Yeah, but then
I'll,
it's not as simple
this is
as
what
that.
I'll say is, which is like I agree that the reality of life is a lot more complex, but I don't think that's for everyone to take on.
Oh, for sure, I completely agree. It goes back to the strong argument. Only the strong are willing to do that. I would
Yeah.
argue.
Oh,
I think religion. This is going to sound controversial, but this is my opinion at the moment. My opinion can change
Yeah.
in a month, it can change in a year. But I think religion, in general, is a construct that protects the herd. It protects the weak. It's a collective movement, and
It does protect the weak.
Yeah, and in
100%.
Islam, in most all religions, is all the same. And this goes back to Islam. This is the problem I have, and this stems is that in Islam, it's the only access you have to Allah, or the only relationship you can build with Him, is only through the Quran. In a sense, when we pray, we all say the same things. When we pray, we all have to wear. We don't all have to, but it's traditionally promoted to wear the same things.
The reason you
Is a uniform again mentality.
The reason why you are finding it hard probably is because there's that one thing. Is that what you're saying? Like there's
No,
only
it's not that one thing. There's
But-
many things. I'm
but
just
why
bringing you one.
No, I know. I'm
Oh, okay.
saying
Oh,
it's
okay,
the
yeah.
Quran. That's what I mean. But the thing is,
And remember, I'm a literature student. So
Yeah.
I'm not a student. Forget the word student. I'm a literature enthusiast. I love literature.
Yeah.
And I can't help but see
Have
the
you read
Quran.
the Quran?
I'm reading it right now. I'm on the House of Imran chapter.
Okay.
And so far, the language is oppressive language to me. It's a lot of, and I think in the Islam, especially in the UK here, we're talking about British society, the Islam that's being promoted here is coming out of prisons. And that's the most dominant way of influencing men. A lot of young men
And
are
that's the
losing
problem.
meaning. They're committing crimes in the gamble or high risk, high reward. They go to prison lonely with no backup, and they come into Islam through brotherhood. They come out, they meet women, and they convert them. The root of Islam in the UK, I would say, is a rotten seed.
but why are they going to Islam and not another religion?
Because it's the most dominant, because it's a brotherhood religion in the prison system.
Okay,
Not just in prison, but there's other places like in
Why is
even
it the fastest growing religion in the world?
Because I would argue
Because,
is
I'm
that we're
sorry.
on a meaningless age.
Okay,
and so
but the thing
Islam is
Islam-
something that's been protected.
Islam gets slated by the media all
Yeah,
the
I
time.
would
It's
argue,
got
yes, you're
such a
completely right. It's a very Islam.
It's got a very
The
negative
West is very
image.
Islamophobic. I agree.
Yeah, but-
and
So
I'm
why are
not
we
here to deter Islam.
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm not. It's just that I'm just a young guy questioning.
No, of
things,
course,
Okay?
yeah.
And
no, it's good to question these.
you have to question.
these,
You have to.
And my opinion is,
That's
I grew
how
up very
you-
Islamic. You know my dad, and you could probably imagine what it's like to
Yeah.
have like Islam. I'm just saying, I don't think you can be born Muslim. I think you have to become. And I would advise people, you have to step away to come in. I don't think you can just...
Yeah.
I disagree.
Because to me, it's just an ideology.
Yeah. Go on.
I think you're born Muslim because Muslim, the word Muslim, means that you are Islamic. You are born, a baby is born very innocent. They don't have a bad bone in their body. Everything bad or all their negative thoughts they learn that as they grow up.
You think that?
Definitely.
So you think psychopath's complete lack of empathy is genetic or is societal?
It's definitely not genetic.
I believe it's more society.
I believe there's societal, like, there's things that happen to you, but there's some very evil people in this world.
Do you think
evil?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, what about people who do evil in the name of Islam?
No, I think
they're not Muslims.
So okay,
that's just
so
easy
if you
regression, I would say.
Hold on, as a religious person,
Muslim.
I just want to ask, as a religious person, do you not believe you must believe in some form of pure good?
A great truth, one truth that upholds all.
Therefore, pure evil must exist.
I think
but pure evil exists. The thing is, everything in this world is made in a balance. I agree with that. Yeah. But the evil comes from external factors.
But the external factors are this.
Evil.
But
no one's born evil.
In my evaluation, correct me if I'm wrong, okay?
Yeah, go on then.
The closer you get to shaitan is when you get closer into the senses. The more you try and please the senses and please your imagination and things like this, you get closer to shaitan, right?
Yeah.
And the closer you get to God is if you, Allah, is if you fit this abstract idea of what a human is. And I think it's fundamentally flawed because everything that's good about a human isn't separate from the human. To take what's all good and beautiful and imaginative and loving about the human and just make it an ideal and say it's not innate and the only way you can achieve that is through Allah and you can't achieve that through your own actions of life, I think it's demoralizing for the human.
With the pleasure, doing bad stuff gives you pleasure. So
what is bad stuff?
For example, you could say, I know for a fact if I tried cocaine, I know for a fact I'm going to enjoy it.
You don't know that.
Would you not say? But would you? Exactly. Why do you need it?
Yes, cocaine's an extreme example.
I think
still people like doing it. That's why.
One reason that I do balance religion out in I still keep it in its existence and I see that it's plausible from a rational perspective is weirdly it's counterintuitive in the sense that for something to have so many rules, it does provide a lot of freedom because it frees you from the rules of your humanly desires. And I definitely agree that a question that is posed is how is a book made so well that it can, even if it's just by a human, let's assume that, how could something be made so well that it provides these rules that really make you feel so good? Because when you do follow it, you are at peace, and I think that's the number one thing to try and achieve in life.
On a historical perspective,
but to argue
the person couldn't read or write as well. He was orating everything.
Yeah. But I'm saying if it were to be written, it's weird how it's so good.
You know what I mean?
I would argue it's not but this is just my opinion again. To answer your point, I think the reason is that it's because human imagination has grown. That is such a vague text. It's not that intricate. It's vague. Therefore, the interpretation through human history can always stay the same because there's some things that speak fundamentally to the human.
Okay, but
so
in its essence, it is timeless.
It's not just the Quran. There's many prehistorical texts like the Greeks, the Egyptians, many proverbs of Hinduism, the Kabbalah, Zoroastrianism that have lasted to this day because there's something pure in it. Therefore, there can't be one great truth. There could be many truths. That is where I'm on this perspective because it's not like the Quran is the only thing we can look at all of. I think for the Quran to be elevated, we have to kind of deter all literature of the past. In a sense, but to say this is the one pure piece of thing because it comes with the religious sentiment of divinity, and if we're going to attach that divinity, that's the Islamic perspective intruding in the literature world, I would examine.
So when you talk about the literature, it depends what type of literature you're talking about. When it comes to if you're talking about saying about
it's a moral literature, no?
Morality does link a lot within the Quran, and you can develop it a lot more. That's why there's other literatures like the hadiths.
So what else can you not develop? So if you can develop that, why can't you develop other aspects in the Quran, like its subjugation of women then?
It doesn't talk about the subjugation of women. It's talking about... Okay, let me explain it to you.
Okay, listen.
All
Correct
right.
me if I'm wrong. I'm open
There's a
to
whole
that.
What language did you read it in? Sorry.
English, of course.
Same.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. There's
There we
obviously
go.
that, but there's so many doors to access before I get to truth.
But okay, cool. You're
It's not
saying
making
that a
life
man-
simple then, is
okay,
it?
You're saying a man is a property of a woman, yeah?
Of-
Did you
yeah,
read?
yeah.
Did wait? Sorry.
I know what you meant.
Yeah.
I know what you meant. My bad.
So
yeah.
why does it also say in the Quran that you have to treat
But where does
women
it-
with
what
respect?
Yeah, I know. Sorry, my bad. That was my fault.
No, it's fine.
Trust you, bro. I trust you.
know
My
what I mean?
fault. Sorry, bro.
It says you treat women with respect, and if you hurt a woman, you will be cursed every step you take while that woman is still hurt. How
No,
can
I-
both those things?
No,
be-
I
And sorry, one more
So go on.
thing. In the Quran, it says that the heavens are underneath the feet of your mum. My mum is a woman.
yeah.
It can't.
I
What if your
agree
mum's a
because-
bad
yeah.
person?
No, but if
What if your mum's evil? How do you approach that?
Yeah, but I think that's why the way I take the text is, I know there's probably some drawback to doing this, but to abstract it into its essential morals. For example, it was made for it was written in its time. So, for example, like a correct punishment for if someone steals is to chop the hand off. Correct, but for the time when you didn't have infrastructure built to imprison people and keep them locked up, that's a very sophisticated system that didn't
Okay.
exist. So how do you have a form of punishment?
Oh.
So I take that and I wouldn't say, oh, they would say to chop off the hand when you steal. It's more the abstraction of justice. It's the concept is to teach people what is just. And say, for example, the having multiple wives, for example, is the protection of women. At the time, it was a lot more dangerous. There wasn't this protection. I mean, you can say protection now that we have in the West, but at the time, it was probably a lot more dangerous. So for the abstract moral is to protect women, as opposed to the literal rule that is in the Quran.
You know,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Times have changed. Like you said, we cannot do exactly what they did.
But
back
that's
then.
that. Yeah.
However,
Yeah, but-
we can learn from it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can learn from the morals and how they were. Their ideas or the ideas from back then, and use them now.
No, I
It's very
definitely
simple.
agree with you. I
But
agree.
it's the worry is in abstracting it. Are you morphing? From a rational perspective, are you morphing a book into something you want it to be?
Thank you.
And that's what
a
I
lot of
worry
people
about.
I.e.
do that.
interpretation.
For
Yeah.
example, this is why I hate it when in the news it says Muslim terrorist. Those two words.
Of course, but that's media.
Together.
That's media.
Terrorist.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm getting.
And the
a lot of
Western is
people use it,
Islamophobic,
though.
for
Yeah,
sure.
but a lot of people use those two words together. I'm
Mm.
like, there is nothing Islamic about someone killing innocent people.
I agree, yeah.
It is
I agree.
written very clearly in the Quran. You kill an innocent person, you are going to hell. It's as simple as that.
And I think you're right. And I think the Islamophobic media capitalize on people's ignorance of Islam in a sense. And I think you're right. And I was gonna say, but listen, I guess my biggest issue, not just Islam as religion, is that I don't like anything that assumes the human at birth is weak and inferior, and that the human has to, in order to be good or great, they have to aspire to this set of abstract ideals.
I think
I think human born has already those
Yeah.
abstract ideals innate to him in
Yeah.
his will, in his being.
I agree to an extent. I think with the personality thing that we said before, when I said how, do you think it's expressiveness is even a good idea in itself? Because for a human, if you were to live the best life you could, if you were completely non-religious, for example, and you were like, okay, I'm going to maximize my happiness throughout my life, how much could I maximize my welfare throughout the time that I live? What would be the best course of action? To give in to humanly desires.
Pursue power.
Okay, or completely remove that hierarchy as something that's not even in your system and pursue a peace. Because in pursuing power, there's a lot more ups and downs. You give into your humanly desires. It's a very hectic ride.
And not everybody pursue power.
No, but not power
As well.
in the sense of political power or great power. Power, whatever makes you feel powerful.
But I see that as
Yeah.
climbing
Or
up
purpose is another
climbing
word
up
you
a
can say.
hierarchy,
Yeah.
regardless of
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
hierarchy is. climbing up a hierarchy, it does make you feel good
Yeah.
because you have an
I don't know,
animalistic
but I think
tendency.
I would disagree with that. Power isn't just essentially a hierarchical thing. I think power is definitely subjective to the individual, what they think is to be powerful, what their purpose is. And I think the ultimate kind of person is someone who finds power in empowering. And therefore we go back to the idea of the leader again. And for a leader, they cannot be a part of the uniform. They cannot be a part of what everyone else is doing, if you get what I mean. They have to be immoral in a sense in a leader and separate themselves.
Yeah, but that's when you look at, like, you can look at morality differently depending on whose perspective you're looking at it from. Because if you're an individual, like, say for example, as an individual, I think being expressive is amazing. Yeah, but if you're leading a society, you shouldn't think that, because in order for a society to prosper, you have to align it to some form of illusion of originality, but fundamentally the same. Yeah. And if you're, but that is a form of good because that leads to communal prospering.
Yeah.
So that is a good, but then so it's like they're contradicting depending on what perspective you're looking at.
It all comes down to
not many people will think otherwise. Exactly, 100%, because. So, like you said about having that, you imagine having that one personality, but not many will agree. Let's say if he expresses himself as a leader, a lot of people will go against him in a sense of, because he doesn't agree with that or doesn't agree with that point. But him having that illusion, it does make sense, because
it gives him the power to transform. It
does, exactly, and that's how a leader in a way should be, where he doesn't talk about his own personal beliefs and express himself.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt you, but we're about to finish. I want to ask one more question, okay, about Islam. And me personally, I definitely believe in that, okay? I definitely believe there's something, I'm not ready yet to say is Allah, just yet. But this is my question. And this is the question I've been struggling with, I guess, for myself, and I just want to put it out to the panel, I guess. Can you get to Allah without Quran? Can you get to Allah or God without religion? Could you have a personal relationship devoid of all of these sets of codes?
You need a sense of direction.
Yes.
Can you use that as a direction but never fully commit to it? You can borrow what you think is good. You can borrow what you think is true, but you don't need to assume it's truth. You know? You can be, I guess...
Yeah, no, I agree, because that is the path that I take, which is why I think it's a very complicated thing.
Do you know what's interesting about that question? I actually spoke about this the other day. We don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, you're so right.
Who actually knows? Because I actually researched this.
You're so right.
If you are non-Muslim and you are a great person, you don't harm anyone, you do everything good, like as in you respect people, you're a good person, you respect your family, you help the elderly, you help the poor. Are you going to go to heaven? No one knows. I looked at an Imam Q&A. He said, we don't know. How can we know?
So at the end of the day, it comes down to
you don't have to be Muslim.
There's some scholars.
You don't have to be... you don't have to follow... You don't have to be Muslim by label, but you can be Muslim as in your values.
Yeah.
But I think this could be a whole new
But
episode.
you know what?
I think religion is
some
uniquely
scholars,
individual.
Yeah.
Like, it's very individual. For me, like, I think my interpretation, like we said, our personality is derived from our experiences, and they're very unique, and no one will understand where we get them from. We might not even understand where we get them from, but if there is a God, then they will definitely understand where we got them from. So it's only a conversation between me and Allah. If that's it. So if I'm to, for example, you should not judge someone else. If it's the journey itself that is what is religious. It's not where they are. It's the journey.
And anyone that judges, that is haram as well.
Yeah, exactly. But because with Islam, because fundamentally with humans, I believe that we fundamentally try to chase hierarchies. Within Islam itself, there is this hierarchical thing of you are at the top if you are most religious. And it's like
your imam is high.
Yeah, people look down at other people who are say they're Muslim but are not as Muslim. Like you don't know how this hierarchy is built. You have no concept, and it's the idea that you are limited in your ability to understand.
Can I ask you something as well? The people who have like the highest iman, as in like their belief, how strong their belief is to God, even though they could be following word for word when it comes to like them not doing the haram stuff, as well as even doing some sunnah, as in like following how the Prophet used to live. The point of it is that them having been the highest, they shouldn't be. They will never have any judgment. More times they will love the way how you are as a person. That's the thing.
Because then, to your point, this is a whole new concept. Because I would say, that's
No
one thing I
Muslim
don't like about Islam. Not
should
didn't
be
like.
able
That's
to
such a wrong
judge.
word to say. It's like I don't have an opinion just yet on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
concluded.
Yeah,
on it.
you're always
Is
developing your
that people
ideas
copy
and
the
things.
life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam
Because
and that strips away your own
In a
individuality.
sense, no,
You cannot
in
live
a
in the
sense, it's
footsteps
not
of
about. It's
another
not
man.
everybody have different personalities, no matter what.
But it's praise to live in the life of him.
It's
no?
his moral guidelines. Okay, but would people not want to be just like him when it comes to him treating the poor as in a good way? Would he not? Do you not want to be him respecting people, everyone, no matter what their background, who they were, enslaved people or not? Do you want him to be talking in a sense where he would not judge you no matter who you are as a person, what you was before in the past? Even even Umar ibn Khattab, one of the full righteous caliphs that in Islamic, a lot of Muslims believe. So when the Prophet Muhammad died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was 4 righteous caliphs. So it's like Abu Bakr, Umar, and Ali and others. So what Umar says as well, ibn Khattab, he's one of the 4 righteous caliphs who led the Islamic expansion.
So is he divine or is he
No.
political?
He's more a respectable figure. All 4 of them have different personalities, how they act and everything. Even though how they get angry quicker and such, like they have more of a temper. Some of them are more patient. But what he said is people who have the worst past can create the best future. So people, no matter
or
who,
they can create more havoc in the future.
they could, but some people.
It's true.
It's just he said some people have the worst past, no matter what you've done in the past.
I think people should comment if you want another episode.
Us for
Talking about Islam.
But to conclude,
comment.
100%.
But I guess to conclude, it comes down to the one word we have not even mentioned: faith.
Faith.
Like it comes down to faith. Islam is meaningless to one who has no faith.
Yeah.
Islam is everything.
100%.
Islam becomes so real to someone who has intense faith. It's like
it exists in its own belief.
Yes,
like
exactly.
in belief in itself. That's when it comes to existence.
Yeah,
So
that's what your iman is.
And I
your
agree
iman
with
is
you.
your faith.
And I think the most beautiful thing about religion, it teaches one to have so much faith. And I feel like if you have the ability to have strong faith, you can abstractly take that into other aspects of your life in a sense. I think faith is so
100%.
foundational.
Yeah.
And if you are one of those people, I would argue, that struggle for faith, then Islam is one of them. I don't want to say Islam, but any religious system, because at the end of the day, they all kind of serve the same truth, but just different flavors, I would argue. And
you just find your own way. Everybody's in their own spiritual journey at the end of the day. As long as you do research and finding who you are as a person, I would say, hopefully, inshallah, you will get to your goal where you have faith to the point where you're confident in yourself, I would say.
I think I've just made like a realization. I guess where I stand in my own life is I think I have I think it's probably a reflection that I'm young and I'm ambitious. I want to achieve things. I want to be great, leave a legacy. So right now, my faith isn't in a religion. I have to shift all my faith into myself. So that's why I guess a lot of my arguments are very individualism, a lot of the artist transformation, because I want for now, as long as I put all my faith into that, it gives me that stability. And once that faith has served, I can then find the peace, as you said earlier, to maybe spill that water into more.
Here's a question actually. Would you not say you can have faith and faith in yourself both, because it's completely separate?
But it doesn't with
I
Islam.
depends on the person.
With Islam, doesn't it? I feel like sometimes it feels contradictory to have belief in your subservience at the same time as having an ego. Like I think when you even when you're praying, it is very uniform. It is you're one of many who are repeating the same thing, doing the same action. It's the subservience, the understanding that you are not the most powerful. So it's very hard to have an ego at the same time. Maybe it's easy for us.
Wow.
It's like an easy contradiction to live because we live in the West. The way we live every day is as if we have a personality and an ego, but then the way we pray and find peace is the feeling of not having an ego. But there's something comforting about it.
Is
Like,
it
you're right, there is a
actually,
contradiction. And
you know what?
That's spiritual
Personally, I've
warfare
got
in a
questions.
sense.
for that one, actually.
Yeah. But listen, guys, honestly,
I've got a question
finish your
for
point.
there's a question I asked.
Ask the question, and
would
we'll
you
do
say-
it next episode. First
Alright,
question.
cool.
Okay.
Oh no, there's one question I just thought in my mind. I was thinking when it comes to personality, are personality and traits different to one another, or are they the same? Would you say?
And that's where we wrap it up, guys. So we'll do that. And listen, as Imad said earlier, if you want to see this set again, we'll do it. We'll do it ASAP. Even better.
I feel like that one wasn't quite good, to be fair. I enjoyed it.
We're not finished, bro.
My bad.
Anyway, so everyone share your handles on social media. If you want to have a great conversation with these guys, I'm sure they'll always be open to it. Any last words, guys?
Yeah, just thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you come
Yeah.
soon.
I
That
hope
was
you
good.
get us
Appreciate
back on.
Yeah, inshallah.
But yeah, just to conclude, I think the last thing I want to say is that these conversations are so needed. And I guess the goal of the podcast is to give young people a platform to speak about their world in an interesting way, not in a way to disagree to agree somewhere. That is called progress in my eyes, not a debate, not you're right, I'm wrong, because that's not expression.
It's everyone against the
Ironically.
problem, as opposed to our egos fighting against each other.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, next episode will be out next week. But yeah, you get it.
Thank you.
That was great.